We didn't grow up knowing what executive function skills were. Life felt overwhelming. Managing time, staying organized, and feeling stuck made everything difficult. What we didn't realize was that we lacked the skills to plan, prioritize, and break goals into manageable steps. After years of trial and error, we've seen how powerful executive function skills can be. With expert interviews, real stories, and practical strategies, this podcast is the resource we wish we had. Whether you're a student, parent, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential. Welcome to the Executive Function for All podcast. Today we're joined by Nita June, who is the founder of June College Counseling. In this episode, Nita shares how she brings joy to the college application process and supports students with ADHD and other learning differences. We'll cover strategies to help them succeed before they even step foot on campus, how to overcome writer's block on the college essay, and how the college application process is different for California for neurodiverse students. This episode is packed with practical advice, and Nita offers a very refreshing perspective. Let's begin. Nita, thank you so much for joining me today.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
One of the things that I think is unique about you is that so often, and I know I was like this as well, like the college process seems overwhelming and scary and anxiety producing, and we feel like it's this massive ordeal. You come at it in a very different way. It seems light and just joyful. How do you do that?
First and foremost, I think one of my underlying philosophies for just like how I do things in my life, whether it's my work or things on a daily basis, I try to approach it with an attitude of like, if I'm going to do this, I should have fun doing it.
Absolutely,
and stuff has to get done.
Yeah.
So why not do it with an air of levity to it? So with that, I definitely bring that to my approach with my clients and my families. One of the things that I talk about in our initial intro session, when lots of times when parents are, they're talking with different counselors, trying to figure out who's going to be the right fit for them. I talk about that one of my foundational philosophies for this work that, as you noted, is, anxiety causing, like stressful, just weighted, is that I look at this process as like an adventure. And with an adventure, you're definitely going to have all those things, the stress, the worry, the feelings of danger, etc. But also like approaching it as this feeling of like lightness and excitement and like, ooh, what is next around the corner? Maybe I will get in there. I don't know. What if I do get to go to North Carolina or whatever, wherever the college may be? And so there's that piece that I'd like to approach it with, of kind of this like, choose your own adventure, choose your own narrative. How are you framing that narrative for yourself as you step down this process? And then also I like to see it's not necessarily as like much of a levity and a lightness, but really holding this process as one of like a rite of passage. And so doing it with intention, that I don't know that necessarily like takes away or heals any feelings of anxiety, but there's a sense of purpose that I think can be really grounding and can take students and families out of this sense of like buzziness.
Has it always been like this, where it seems so high stakes and there's a lot of pressure? As I know you've been in this field for a bit.
I think underneath it's always been that way, but it's definitely more now than ever.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. I think so much of that is just within high school too, and the kids' social circles, and it's just kind of passed down from each grade above to the one below of like, you got to get on this now. And so as teachers, parents, tutors, counselors, etc., I think it's important for us to hold the space of like, it is doable, this is manageable, and kind of try to tame that worry and the stress for our kids. But it's real. It's also, the stress is real. And so I think I want to always approach it with too, like I come about it with this, attitude of like levity and brightness and let's do this. We've got this. And I also don't want to dismiss like, yeah, you're stressed out and this is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. It's talked about so much, and it just seems, I know parents have a hard time with it, especially if they love their kids and they're worried about their kids, and sending them, whether it's in-state, out-of-state, especially the kids who think differently, the kids we're going to speak about in a sec. I see a lot of anxiety in that. And I love that you start there, because I feel like we've forgotten that this is supposed to be fun and exciting. And it's not about the bumper sticker on your car. It's supposed to be like this fun rite of passage type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's my hope for a life outlook too, is it's not supposed to be all grind and testing, but we want to enjoy ourselves. And so I often say too, when we're building college lists, like the college where I believe a student will be most successful at is the college where they will be happiest at. And so for some, that might be they love the competition, they need the edge, they need the push, of like other peers around them who are also like super high achievers. For other students, they might be happiest if they're if they're a big fish in a small pond, and so trying to help them find that too. That they're going to feel their best.
It's a really cool mindset. Do you have other mindsets like that because often we get stuck on the name brand college? Besides finding that, I like that a lot, like getting an inventory on your child and like, do we need competitive, not competitive, what do we need here? Besides that, do you have any other thought processes that are helpful for families to hear?
I think one of the things I also like approach just the whole college list building thing too at the beginning is, I have a variety of students. Some students are like, I have no idea what I want to study, no idea where I want to go. And others come in very specifically, like, these are my 8 colleges. This is exactly what I want. And both are fine. I think to have those different approaches or just different, statuses of where you're at in terms of the whole list building thing. But one of the things I try to bring in with both of those is like, let's look at some other things, different things. If students like, has a list of 10 and they're all like, big state schools, rah, big cheer, school spirit, awesome. And I'm like, let's just maybe look at like Colorado College, or something like that has like an alternative thing. And I don't know that it's necessarily a mindset, but it's something I try to do to get them to expand their perspective a little bit out of like this fixed mindset of this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. And even if they end up choosing back to, I totally want to go to Ole Miss or whatever, that they have looked at other things that are out there just to even know that there's other options and other opportunities and other like routes available, because who knows what's going to come for them in the future too.
Yeah. And when you say look at, is that just doing research online? Is that getting on campus? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it depends on the family, because some families like really want to go on campus and look. And I personally feel like that's the best way, because you get onto campuses and you just so often get hit with this gut feeling of like, this is awesome. Or I've had students be like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to love, love the X school. And I got there and I was just like, I didn't like the food. The people didn't look like me. I don't know. I felt off. So I think it's really important to go. But then lots of times, families are busy or it's just out of their budget to go to all these places. So with that, I think it becomes really important to just do even more research. And there's some great resources online. Now you can do virtual tours of a campus. They have information sessions that are available with students, with admissions counselors, that you can get a bigger sense of it. But I personally think going to campus is good. And you can do that in the application process, or you get in and then you can go after too.
Yeah. Well, and I know as someone who went from Boulder, Colorado out to the middle of Ohio, like I never thought that would be my path, but sometimes you just feel it when you're on campus. Especially, I know for me, I struggled so much in school, and you get somewhere you're like, oh, this feels right. And I don't know how you replicate that without it. Obviously it's a budget thing, but yeah, especially if you have a neurodiverse kid, sometimes it feels very different to them.
Right. Yeah. And that can be really hard too, to even get that feeling through like, online info session.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have an expertise in writing. Like writing the college essay is something that I know you've done a ton, you have an expertise in, and you're passionate about. Let's start with the procrastination piece, because procrastination is the word I hear more than any other word in the college process. These essays can become really overwhelming because they ask you to dig deep. How do you help a student get started in an authentic way so there's not that blank page, or they're not just turning to AI, which isn't them, right? Like, how do you help them get started on that?
Yeah. Initially, I like reading other examples so they can figure out like, oh, like what does this even look like? Oh, wait, I could do it in that structure. Oh my gosh, that person started with their own poem. What? To kind of break the mold of like what this personal essay needs to look like, quote unquote. And then I have a whole list of questions that I've developed over the years that help me to help them figure out like what themes and what stories are most important to them. And this is actually where I feel like my background is actually in theater and film and music. And like I was, performer for many years, but then I turned to directing. And this is where I feel like my experience in directing kind of comes into play, because I'll listen to them tell their different stories, give their different answers to these questions. And I'm able to kind of pick out themes and like almost like them as a role and help them like cast, it's not casting in the same, but like cast their story in a certain way or pitch their story in a certain way based off of these answers. But then, right, so that's great. We've got the theme. And then you're like, how do you actually start the writing? But that really depends on the student. Sometimes they'll have them just talk and I'm typing notes. Sometimes they'll have them just talk to themselves and, audio record it, and then it writes it down on Google or whatever, transcription service. Oftentimes I bring in this idea of one of my favorite writers who writes about writing a lot. Her name is Anne Lamott, and she talks about the SFD. And I'm going to swear, everyone. The SFD stands for the shitty first draft. And like, you have to have that. Like, it's not going to be perfect. You have to just like word vomit onto a bit.
Well, it takes the pressure off students, especially because I'm sure I know we see a lot of students who have this perfectionism thing, and then we just spin. And so giving them the permission to have a shitty first draft, I think is really important.
Yeah. And I often say with that too, sometimes even that's like not enough. And I say, okay, before we next meet, I want you to set yourself a timer, like literally. You're going to set yourself a timer of 20 minutes. It could even be 15. And you're going to click start, and you're just going to, write for 20 minutes, and it's going to be bad and let it be bad. And then your timer stops, and I want you to walk away. So they just have like something on this blank page.
And we'll go from there, right? Yeah. I have a ton of questions for you that I think this is so helpful for parents to hear. I'm really interested in the narrative approach, because often when I work with students, and I don't work on college essays, but I hear them talking about, they always want to go to these like deep, dark places in their life, and it feels heavy. And I see why they're having a hard time starting it. So I like the narrative piece where it's almost taking a little pressure off them, that they don't have to go to this really hard place. What type of questions do you ask them to find these patterns?
Yeah, some of them would be directed towards more of that hard place, like what's been the hardest thing in your life? What relationships have been really challenging for you? One of my favorite questions is if you had like a highlight reel of your life, what 10 moments would stick out?
I like that a lot.
Like that, I feel like, is a really great one, because they're like, oh my gosh, that time, I don't even know why this popped into my head. They're like, I was with my dog on this hike in the morning, and it was like the best feeling ever. I'm like, oh, that's cool. We're gonna stick with that. Yeah. And then of course it'd be like time I broke my arm, when my grandpa died, stuff that will be tied in there too. But oftentimes there's little things in those top 10 moments of life that I'm like, oh, that's cool. Wow. I appreciate that you asked that about like, this narrative piece of like, doesn't have to even be about a deep, dark, hard thing. I often say there's probably like 80% of these personal statements or college essays are sad and like heartbreaking. And can you imagine as an admissions officer?
You're talking about, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, who has to read these like heartbreak things all day, every day?
Totally. So I was like, if you can make it funny, let's do it. I think if you can make them laugh, that's awesome.
I think that's really impactful for parents to hear, because I think, and again, we want to be authentic, but going right to this hard place, I think we feel like that's maybe the most vulnerable, that's going to stick out. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's not. It's okay to be, going back to our original question, it may be okay to be light.
Absolutely. Yeah. And still be authentic with it. And that can be, that is real also, especially if a student is that way naturally, that they are, funny and playful. I have students, who are like, oh my gosh, my life's been really great. I don't have anything to write about. So let's be grateful for that first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then let's go in a different direction. What was like a really wacky experience in your life, that you got a new insight from something, and try to make it lighter.
Do colleges respond to that wacky side? Because you see students throughout the process, right?
Yeah.
Because I can see a lot of parents, and even myself listening to this, being like, well, if I don't write about something really deep, will they take me seriously?
And yes, if it's written in a great way, if it's written in a strong way. I think what might sometimes be missed over is the bigger theme for this personal statement is like showing a path of development, or showing like a path of discovery of self and lessons learned and insights on oneself. And so that's like the foundation of it. And how you do that could be through a sad, challenging story. It could also be through something funny or an outlook that that's more humorous in tone. And so absolutely, I think, I know because I've had students who have written more lighthearted essays that have gotten into great schools that, yeah, humor doesn't have to be like frivolous. It can be meaningful.
I always assumed these had to be these like heavy moments where we came out and showed a lot of resilience and giving kids the permission to be themselves. And it makes sense now that you said it. Like, well, college wants all these kids who have been through, like really heavy stuff. Like they want different populations. They want the funny, goofy kid as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Who can look on things. I had a kiddo a couple of years ago write about his experience as a powder puff, like doing
That's funny.
And it was brilliant. I mean, he was a good writer. It was written intelligently, but I was like, oh my gosh. And he got into great schools.
So the students have the idea. They have the first draft. That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Yeah, then we start to work and rework and throw things away and come back. And that's something that I remind them at the start too, with this bad first draft, that like we are going to have many drafts. Like it's not going to be a second and then final draft. Like we're going to keep returning to it and switching it. And I think that's something that they've not experienced much in their life. In school, you usually have a first draft and a final draft.
Yeah.
And like maybe this is experienced more in art, or like in theater where you've got, months of rehearsal before you go up to things. But in terms of like writing, it's not something that they have, unless they themselves are a writer and they've gone through this process before, which most of them aren't. Like they haven't had this process of like, oh, this is going to be multiple times returning to it. And that doesn't mean you're bad. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That doesn't mean you're failing. This is actually the writing process. This is why it takes people years to write books, not a week.
And again, I keep coming back to the executive function just because that's our focus. The biggest reason we see students procrastinate is, I guess it's twofold. One is they feel like it's too big, so you're breaking it down. And then two, they're just nervous to put themselves out there, right? It feels emotionally overwhelming. And we are taught, you have 2 drafts to get this right. And the fact that you guys are doing this over and making that clear up front, I think that's really important for families to hear, whether you use a consultant or not. Just like, this is going to take, I'm guessing, 5 to 10-ish type drafts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in that process too, what I find is so lovely is I get to know the student more and more. And that starting at that place that it can be a bad draft to then working with them, I find that our trust builds more and more. They're able also to show more of themselves because they trust me in the feedback that I'm giving them, and can relax a bit into the process of it.
Yeah.
Versus just like, oh my gosh, okay, most of the time we don't start writing right away. We get to know each other in, could be weeks, could be months before that. But it's a really wonderfully bonding process too.
Yeah.
This writing piece.
Well, and the reason I adore the college process, and I'm sure I may feel different, I may not when I go through it with my own daughter, but as of right now, the reason why I just adore it is because it is the ultimate test of these executive function skills. There are so many moving pieces, and you figure out really quickly which students have systems, which have skills, which have the ability to be vulnerable and pull everything together. And even if it doesn't go well in quotations, it's great practice for what they're going to experience at the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that too, just about like seeing, where students are at. I've got some students who I'm like, okay, before next meeting, have X, Y, and Z done. And they come back and they've done that and are already planning for the next step. And then I've got my students that are like, I don't remember what I was supposed to do. And I'm like, okay, all good.
Let's write it down.
Review,
yeah.
Do it again, review. And just supporting them that's okay too. Like we've got the written down notes. This is where it is. Again, just that reminder of the process of things and helping them to build the process within themselves, which can be challenging. I mean, that's what you guys do here.
And to build systems.
Yeah.
Because it's always, a lot of students you and I see are very bright.
Yeah.
And we see very quickly if they're keeping everything in their head or if they have systems. And we know that that's something that they're going to need when they live away from home. So it's a great practice.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about, you are really good with students who think differently. So let's start with ADHD. Is your coaching any different for how they think about college and where they, or how they go through the process, or is it pretty similar?
I would say it's pretty similar. I think first and foremost, like for good or bad, right or wrong, I look at every single student like just as, a unique individual, whether they're neurodivergent or have, a learning challenge or come from a private school or a charter school or public school. And I really just try to meet them like, okay, here we are. This is what where you're at. This is the support that you're going to need to get to where you want to go. I think with overall with my students who with ADD, ADHD, I feel like the majority of those students tend to want to go to a bigger school where it's going to be fun, vibrant. I don't know. There's like this like freedom that they
energy.
Yes,
they can't get enough of it. Yep.
Yeah. And so it is with those students, like I said, going back to that, I try to bring in like one or two other schools that might be a little different. I start to bring into their mindset too of like, what support will you need? You know, yes, we want you to have a fun time. Like I want you to have fun in life. And trying to bring in this like kind of big picture, small picture thinking. Okay, so like big picture, you want to have fun. Big picture, you also want to be employable at the end of your time, have gained skills that you feel capable, etc. Smaller picture, what is that going to mean for you on, you know, a daily, weekly basis to feel like you have that support and you're not just floundering and, you know, filled with energy, but not know how to direct it. Yeah. So we will look at some smaller schools and just like focus on those differences of like, you're going to get this individualized support here, you know, from potentially a smaller school. You're going to get this energy here. And oftentimes we kind of come to a middle point that there are a lot of schools that are like, not a lot actually, but there's schools that are like 5 to 10,000 that can be a nice match for actually a lot of those kids who might need that more individualized support, but also want the like big rah-rah high energy school spirit.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for starting where you did, because I sometimes get the question, it's not my expertise, but what's the best college for ADHD students? I'm like, I have no idea. Like they're individuals. It doesn't depend on the diagnosis. Now, that being said, a lot of our high energy, and I'm going to way over categorize right now, but young men, right? They want the bigger schools, right? So, and then there's, you know, someone who's more reserved, maybe inattentive ADHD that may want something else. But yeah, so much of this is just getting to know your student and then finding what learning supports that they offer.
Yeah, I really feel so. In most schools these days, fortunately, do have support systems for different style learners. And so that's something, you know, that we want to look into before with each school and then hook them up with those support centers before, you know, they're actually on campus.
That's really important. That's a step most people probably don't think about.
Yeah.
It's like getting in touch before you even step foot on campus.
And fortunately, you know, again, like a lot of universities and colleges have these support centers now because so many kids are coming to them with just different needs and need extra support on things. I think one of the things that can be the most challenging though is just getting the students to actually go there, you know, like go to the writing center there to help you.
Well, I know one of the biggest deficits we see, skill deficit, is the ability to advocate.
Yeah.
Two-part question. One, do you see that? And second, is there other big skills that you see missing that would be worth the time before our kids go to school?
Yeah, really great questions on both fronts. Someone asked me the other day, and this is something that I feel like my guess is that they don't have their parents there reminding them to advocate for themselves, giving them that, you know, that extra foundation. I think there can also be just like the challenge to, I don't know, fit in, you know, in their new college and like, well, blah, blah, blah doesn't need support. I should be able to do this on my own independently too. So I definitely see that.
Which is usually a myth in their head, by the way.
Right. Oh my gosh, 100%.
We see that all the time, but behind the scenes, like nobody else is going to a different testing location. That's when I hear more than anything else. And it's like, I'm pretty sure like a third of the students have that accommodation, but they just don't see it. Besides advocating, what other skill deficits are you seeing that would be helpful to work on before students leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think what, you know, you've talked about like building systems. One of the things in my like kind of like exit, not interviews, but like final meetings that I'll have with my students after applications are in, they've chosen where they want to go, is just giving them a big picture overview of like what a day in the life of college is, because it's so different. You know, you don't have class. You're not in class from 8 to 3 or 4 every day, and then you're doing your homework. You might have Wednesdays and Fridays off, quote unquote, you know, and then you have 3 classes. And so it appears on first glance like you have so much time. But in that piece, you have to read 2 books and write like 3 16-page papers. And so building those systems and not even rebuilding, but building a schedule for themselves to be able to navigate this completely new academic schedule, you know, that is in college. So I think that's a challenge for a lot of students, is the time management of it.
I could talk about this for hours because we see this so often. It's the structure of home to the unstructure And how do families start helping kids, young adults, build that now before they leave? Things like the most common thing we're hearing right now is students are like, I have no time to do my homework. I have no time. And what's happening is they'll have an hour or two between classes and they're letting that escape. They're on TikTok or whatever because like, I only have an hour. And then they get home after they eat dinner and they have 3 or 4 hours of homework. Yeah. And our students are using the time in between. Just basic understanding of time is something we're just seeing over and over right now.
Yeah. And I think that's something just in this day and age. Like it's how we see time, how we experience time is vastly different than when you and I grew up, you know, and you went home and you had a break and you were like, well, I guess I'll walk the dog.
I'm so bored. I'm bored. Yeah.
Like, read the National Geographic for my 4th.
Yeah. I love that you're starting to have those conversations with students about how to basically just understand what it's like to not have as much structure.
Yeah. And I think what I also try to remind them too is they're building these skills for life, and that yes, it is for college, but like they're going to need these foundational skills for the rest of their life, you know, for a job or whatever it is. And that is one of the beauties of going to college is it can be like a testing, you know, and a trial zone for that.
Yeah.
And that you still have supports. You're in a dorm, you've got a cafeteria, you know, you've got the option of someone else making your
It's safer than just launching into the world, but you still have to have that basic understanding. We're in Colorado and we see so many students who want to go to college in California. And I know that's a big thing across the country. California schools are so different for college. How is the application process different?
Yeah, great question. So for the private schools in California, the application process is the same. So that would be like USC, Stanford, Chapman, Santa Clara. They use what's called the Common Application, which is what most of the U.S. schools are on. But then the University of California schools, so that's Berkeley, UCLA, Merced, Bakersfield, which no one ever, you're like, UC Bakers? Like, what?
Yeah. I know.
San Diego, Santa Barbara, Irvine, Davis, Santa Cruz. Those have their own application. And then the California state schools also have their own application. So there's 2 different like application systems to navigate for the California schools. California likes to do it differently. And with those, it's interesting. Like the Cal State application is very similar to European school applications. It is numbers. It is your test scores. It is they only use test scores for placement of first level classes. It's your grades and what level classes you've taken. And that's it.
Very cut and dry.
Yeah. So it's a pretty darn easy application.
Yeah.
Which some students are like, great, this is so easy. And then other students, of course, say like, they don't know anything about me, you know?
Yeah.
They don't take letters of recommendation. It's name, number, facts. You know, that's it.
Wow.
And one of the schools that's become increasingly popular here with like Boulder County, Denver area students is California Polytechnic, Cal Poly SLO, San Luis Obispo. And they're just loving Colorado students. So right now I have students in California and students here. And I would say I think Cal Poly SLO's acceptance rate is like 27% or 30% or something like that. I would say 80% of my Colorado students got in.
Interesting.
And like maybe 20% of my California students, like better grades California students, but Colorado students got in because I think they want the money.
Yeah.
And then for the UC, so University of California schools, I would say it's kind of in between the Common App where they want the long personal narrative and they have 8 questions and you can answer 4 of them. And they're much more kind of like AP style. Like you rephrase the question, they want examples, and then you wrap it up and you're out. They don't really want the deep dive of the story or the emotional turmoil that you may have gone through. They just want to see like how you think more. And it's a different style of an application, but it's a slightly different approach. It's like it almost feels like more scientific in doing it in a way, I guess, or more like technical. Maybe scientific's not the right word, but like technical writing is more what they're looking for.
For kids with executive function challenges, I haven't been through this process, but it seems like a lot. Like, because with all the other states, you just do Common App for the most part.
Yeah.
And just shoot it out wherever. Yeah. It feels like a lot to have all these different pieces moving. When you're in it, is it a lot, or is it just another thing to juggle?
Yeah, it can. I mean, yeah, it's just a lot because the whole process is a lot. But definitely how I try to approach it is, because I've done it now, this is my 11th application cycle, so 11th year doing it, is I found that if we start with the personal statement, so that's the main story that they're telling to all schools on the Common App. And then we start writing the individual, they're called supplemental essays for each school. by the time we get to the University of California essays, we will likely have written at least 2, if not 3 or 4 of them already.
That's a good way to look at it, because when I hear a student with ADHD wants to apply to Common App schools and then to California schools, I kind of like cringe a little. I was like, this is hard enough. Do we really want to add that stress? But at the same time, a lot of them have dreams to go out there.
Right.
It's good to hear that there's some overlap.
Yeah, definitely. And I try with most of my work too, just make it like, how efficient can we be with it? You know, we want to do everything to the best of our ability, but we also want to streamline our energy. Like, you don't have to write something brand new for every single school. Let's use the community essay that you used for Oregon and use that for Wisconsin and switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
So,
well, do you ever steer students clear of California?
I do. And I'm finding too, what's interesting just in terms of like the timeline of things, because a lot of my students will apply early action, which is those due dates are coming up November 1st, to a lot of the Common App schools. And they have started to self-select for themselves that they're like, I am so tired. I do not even want to use these schools anymore. And then there's, students who are like, no, this is my dream. I want to do this. But it comes more of a self-selection process of just like, and I think some of those students too, they never visited. They just have heard UCLA and it's that name and they're like, well, let's do it. And then when things get real, they're like, I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'd be really happy if I got into Wisconsin or whatever, other school that's on the Common.
Yeah. Well, and that's helpful, I think, to hear, because I know a lot of parents, sophomore year especially, will look at this process and be like, do we really want to do California on top of it? And so to hear that when they tap out, they may tap out before parents even need to step in.
Totally. Yeah. And that's something, even at the beginning of our process together, I'll remind them, like, this is a completely separate application. That's one of the things I do in one of our first meetings is we look at what each application is made up of, just so they know, like, okay, there's these essays for this, there's this essay for this, there's these activities for this, so they can have this bigger picture view of it all. And maybe even, at that point be like, well, I'm not. I'm good. With that. Yeah.
Last question. We have a lot of our students who struggle with these executive function skills. They just think differently. And that often makes them great in performing arts, in the theater. And you actually have a specialty there as well. And so how do you think about the college process for that type of student?
Yeah. Talking about all the different moving parts, I feel like this is where it gets the most challenging, is these students who are so creatively driven, and a lot of them, might have different learning styles, and they're just like, on fire though, in a very specific way. They shine brightly. And then when it comes to maybe academics in the classroom, they're like, I do not get algebra.
Yeah, I was to say, it's always math that popular. It's always 100% math.
Totally. Yeah. And they're like, but, and they're brilliant and they're so talented. And that process, I think, can be the most challenging for those students, just because there's everything that we've talked about in terms of these different applications. And then unfortunately for students who are going into the creative arts, so this is visual, also, film, musical theater, acting, music, performance, they have probably 2 times the number of essays to write, because there's additional artistic statements of purpose and intent for each specific school. And then they've got the auditions themselves. And a lot of the auditions it's called a pre-screen. So you do it's like a test thing, and they look at you first and they're like, now we will invite you to do the audition. So we've got,
that's a
lot.
Spreadsheet,
heaven or hell.
I was just going to say, how do you organize all that? And it just has to be hyper organized, which seems counterintuitive for most of the performing arts students that I know. I would call them free thinking. Yeah.
And in some ways I feel like it's like putting them in the oven and like being kind of like, this is a test. And 98% of them come out resilient in it. But I do feel like it puts them in this place of like, oh my gosh, I have to juggle all these things. How am I going to do it? But then it sets them up for success in college and for later in their life. Because it's, within the performing arts fields too, it's not going to get any easier. You're doing this job, then you have to do your audition, and you've got to do this mixtape and blah, blah, blah. Like, it goes on and on and on. So it's a little testing ground for them too. Like, do I really want it?
It comes back to why this process can be so beneficial if we can take as much anxiety out of it as possible. It's never going to be anxiety free because it's a lot, but looking at the skills we can develop versus the college that we get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
And one thing I'll just say, the last thing that I say with these students, that I say with all my students, again, I think I mentioned this before, is like really trying to hold the big picture. Okay, we're in this, like boiling sauna that can feel so anxiety causing. And I often say to my students, like, your future self is going to be so damn proud of you. Like, do this now so that yourself next week can be like, oh my gosh, I already did that. Yeah. Go me.
It's awesome. Nita, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for reminding us of the joy and the skills we're building within this process.
My absolute pleasure.
Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, my website is nitajune.com. So it's NITAJUNE.com. And there's the info about me, booking a complimentary intro session. I have some writing coaches that individuals can look at, and there's all sorts of good things on my webpage. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Executive Function for All podcast. If today's episode brought you any value, please rate us 5 stars and share it with someone who may benefit. And remember, every small step you take builds towards your success. For resources and guidance, visit untappedlearning.com. Keep growing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.